Why, hello everyone, how are you doing this fine day? Hope you're enjoying your week. Welcome to another survival challenge. And I am finally getting to making my Space Marine versus Helldivers video. I said that I was going to do this video a long time ago. Well, okay, it was like a month or two, so maybe not that long, but that's a long time. Do you have any idea how many people have died in that amount of time, like across the world? That's a lot of people. I mean, think about it. Out there in the ether, there are people who saw my initial video where I talked about making this video, who were really excited to see it, and now that this video is finally out, they can't because they're fucking dead. I was being a real selfish piece of shit. Why'd I wait so long? Those poor people wanted to see this video too. So let's take a moment of silence for all those poor dead motherfuckers who can't enjoy this video along with us. But the show must go on. Before we get started, we gotta go over the ground rules. Because yes, of course there are ground rules. Otherwise, we're just living in chaos with raining cats and dogs and anarchy and shit. First rule, not really a rule, more like an explanation of a rule. Why did I choose the numbers that I chose for each particular side of this engagement? Did I just roll a fucking 20-sided dice and I say, okay, 20 Helldivers, 3 Space Marines, there we go, we're done? No, I actually chose these numbers because they're lore accurate. So in Space Marines, there's something called a Space Marine Strike Force, which consists of 3 Space Marines. You can have more than one Strike Force and have 6, 12, 15, however many you want. And you can even send in whole armies of like 500 fucking Space Marines. But a single strike force on a small mission such as this, they would only send 3 Space Marines. Now, if you go over to the Helldivers side, they have the Helldivers Squads. Terrible fucking name for a team. Strike Force is way better. Squad is awful. It makes it sound like I'm delivering fucking Girl Scout cookies or something. But then again, Helldivers is a cooler name than Space Marine, so, you know, it is what it is. I told my friend the other day that I was playing Space Marine, and he doesn't know anything about Warhammer 40k. So when I told him that, he thought I was making up the name of a game. Like, he didn't believe me that it was a game called Space Marine. He said it sounded like a fake game they would make for a movie because of copyright issues. Like, they wouldn't be able to use a real game. So they just made up some bullshit. And I kind of have to agree with him a little bit. I never really thought about it, but yeah, it does. Anyway, a Helldiver squad is made up of 4 Helldivers with 4 reinforcements for each Helldiver. So basically, you send 4 Helldivers down to a planet. When one of them dies, you will replace that Helldiver with another Helldiver, and you will keep doing that continuously until either you run through all the reinforcements, which are 20 people, or you complete the mission. If all 20 die, the mission's over, and Super Earth no longer finds it worth it to keep throwing resources at this particular engagement. So that's basically what's going to be. It's going to be a single Helldiver squad of 4 men with 16 reinforcements against a single 3-man strike force from the Space Marines. Now, at the end of the video, depending on which side does better and how it goes, I may vary up the numbers a little bit and give you sort of my thoughts on who I think would do better if you change them. Like, how would 4 Helldivers do against 3 Space Marines? How would 4 Helldivers do against 1 Space Marine? How would 1 Space Marine do against 1 Helldiver? And sort of get my thoughts on how the challenge would go if you altered those numbers a bit. But for now, a full Helldiver squad versus a full Space Marine strike force. Ground rule number 2. Before I released this video, I released a post basically announcing that this video was coming out. And there were a couple of people saying basically somewhere along the line of, if the Helldivers get their destroyer ships, then the Space Marines should get their battle barge, because that would put them on even playing field. That would only be fair. I argue, no, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because a destroyer ship to a Helldiver is not the same as a battle barge to a Space Marine. There is not a Helldiver alive that does not have their own destroyer ship. It's a main part of their arsenal, and it's where a majority of their weapons and abilities are located. They have a link directly to the destroyer ship by which they can control it, call down weapons, call down armaments, and anything else they would need for constantly changing situations down on the ground. You cannot have a Helldiver without a destroyer ship. On the flip side, for an entire Space Marine chapter that can be 1,000 Space Marines, sometimes it's significantly more than 1,000 Space Marines per chapter, there are only at maximum 3 battle barges. Most chapters only have 1 or 2. A battle barge is a massive fortress that is the HQ and home base of the Space Marine. It is not a part of their common arsenal. If a Space Marine is put down on a mission on a planet somewhere, they do not have access to the battle barge. It's not their weapon to use as they see fit, like a Helldiver's destroyer ship is. So no, that is not an equivalent comparison. The Helldivers will have their destroyer ships. The Space Marines will not have their battle barges. Ground rule number 3. Now, I don't know if this has a name for it, but I'm gonna coin it right now. I'm gonna call it exceptionality bias. If it has a name, let me know. But basically, there's a bias that exists when it comes to these type of versus matches where, let's say I'm talking about Space Marines, right? I'm like, okay, we're gonna take a certain group of Space Marines and throw them at some other group. People are gonna look at the Space Marines group and they're going to take the most exceptional characters within that group and then just say that that's like the average skill level and power of that entire group. This is unbelievably false. Like, for instance, since Space Marine 2 just came out, I'll talk about Space Marine 2. Titus is a main character. He does things in that game that no normal Space Marine character can do. He fights whole armies by himself with just like 2 other people, and he survives things that no normal Space Marine could possibly survive. He is not the average Space Marine. The average Space Marine would be like the Death Watch guys who died at the very beginning by being overrun by like 15, 20 Terminids. It's all the Space Marine bodies that you find along the way as you go through your mission and you pick up their guns, and they were killed by nothing more than a room full of Tyranids. That's the average level. So if I were to take the best of the best Space Marines, I would also have to take the best of the best Helldivers, and that would make this very unfair. Because unlike 40K that takes its story very seriously and its lore very seriously, Helldivers doesn't exactly work that way. Its story and lore is entirely dictated by the community, and every little ridiculous bullshit thing the community comes up with, the developers consider as canon. So for instance, there's a meme character known as John Helldiver. He's essentially the Chuck Norris of the Helldivers world. There's nothing he can't do and can't overcome. There are stories about John Helldiver where he gets launched down to a planet by himself, unarmed with a fucking knife, does his entire mission without ever getting hit by a single attack, slaughtering literally thousands of people, and then getting out while still having like 30 minutes on the clock. There's literally nothing that he can't do, and he's been written directly into the lore. He's a joke character in much the same way characters like Squirrel Girl or Saitama are joke characters. So if I only use feats from the best of the best Space Marines, like characters like Titus, I'm gonna have to use feats from the best of the best Helldivers, who are characters like John Helldiver, who is literally unbeatable because he's a meme joke satire character. John Helldiver, just due to the nature of his character, would be able to overcome all 3 of the Space Marines by himself. He'd be able to defeat 10 Space Marines, 20 Space Marines, 100 Space Marines, because that's the type of character he is. He's a joke. He can literally do anything no matter what the odds are. He can overcome it all with ease. So for this particular challenge, we're just gonna take like the regular dudes. We're taking a general average Helldiver and a general average Space Marine, and we're throwing them up there. So if at any point I say something about a Space Marine and you want to point out some particular feat that's way greater than anything else any normal Space Marine can do, you know, come back to this rule and remind yourself. Because I can also pull out the ridiculous meme shit from John Helldiver. Hold your fucking horses is what I'm saying. But I'm wasting up your time. Let's get started. First up, we have physicals and training. So for the Space Marines, I don't think that there's any surprise here. Their physicals are fucking nuts. They're not human. Originally they were human, but then they are experimented on and have all kind of crazy scientific barbaric shit happen to their bodies to turn them into some kind of ridiculous mutant thing. And this comes with all sorts of crazy and insanely useful perks. Like for instance, being 8 to 9 feet tall, being able to lift 2 to 3 tons over your head without your armor. With your armor, it goes up to about 5 to 9 tons. So basically, without their armor, they can lift a small car, and with their armor, they can chuck a small car. They're capable of running up to 60 miles per hour and are often said to be moving faster than should be possible for something of that size. They have a ton of different extra organs in their body just in case other organs shut down. Like having 2 hearts, so just in case they get shot in one heart, it's okay, they got a backup. They have 3 lungs, with the 3rd lung actually allowing them to breathe underwater. They have the ability to turn half their brain off so that they only use their motor functions and nothing else. For instance, if a Space Marine has to travel from one location to another, but he's really fucking tired, he can actually have his body run to the location that he wants to run while he sleeps. Now, this isn't in any way useful during combat because he can't strategize or really think all that much. He can kind of just tell himself where to go and he'll go there, or do other kind of mindless tasks. So it's not like he'll be able to use that in this challenge against the Helldivers, but it's still pretty cool. As far as their training is concerned, they have, well, the best training in all of the Imperium. They're training everything from marksmanship to hand-to-hand fighting, to swordsmanship to demolitions, and pretty much everything else you could possibly imagine. One thing that, however, may be an issue for them is that a lot of their training is very specialized. While they are all trained to shoot guns and in some form of marksmanship, not every single Space Marine is a master marksman. They do have Marines that are specifically trained in sniping that are superior to that of normal Marines. There are also certain tech-based Marines whose whole purpose is to pilot dreadnoughts, which are these giant mechanical monstrosities. Not every Space Marine can pilot a dreadnought. This means that it doesn't matter what Space Marine I put down to the planet to go up against the Helldivers, they're going to be limited in some way because their skills are specifically specialized in certain things. In terms of just general experience and expertise, they will also have significantly more experience than your average Helldiver as they live to be a lot older. A Space Marine can live to be hundreds and hundreds of years old. And with that age comes a whole lot of knowledge and experience that no Helldiver can possibly have. Many of the Space Marines are going to have more time on a battlefield than the Helldiver has been alive, and that's going to be a factor here. It should be noted that while many Space Marines can live to be several hundred years old, very few actually do. It's been stated multiple times in the lore that it's very rare to meet a Space Marine that is like 200 years old because most of them die way before ever reaching that age. Basically, if you meet a Space Marine that's 200-300 years old, that's one dangerous motherfucker. Having said that, even fighting against a Space Marine that's only like 120 years old is still gonna have significantly more experience than your average Helldiver. Now, going on over to the Helldiver side, this is the part where I kind of have to defend them a little bit because people have a very wrong idea of just how skilled and experienced the Helldivers are. At the very beginning of Helldivers 2, you go through the tutorial and there's a bunch of stats that play on the tutorial that basically tell you like the average life expectancy and all this different kind of stuff of a Helldiver. And based on those stats, people have it in their mind the Helldivers fucking suck. But that's not accurate. Let me explain. There's a couple of stats that made people believe this. One being that the average age of a Helldiver when they join the Helldivers is 18.7. This, for obvious reasons, put it in people's mind that these Helldivers are basically just kids who are unskilled and just thrown at the front lines without having the proper time to train and become skilled enough to be Helldivers. And that the idea that the game puts forward that the Helldivers are the most elite of Super Earth soldiers is just complete bullshit. This is not true at all, and you're missing context. While it's absolutely true the average age for a person to become a Helldiver is 18.7, the only reason why you think that that's young is because you're comparing it to our real world Earth, where that's like the normal age to join the military. But in Super Earth, the legal age that you have to be to join the military is 7 years old. And the entire planet has a culture where everyone joins the military at age 7. Even if you don't join the military, every single citizen of Super Earth gets a free gun at age 10, a rifle. Helldivers are not the only soldier type that the Super Earth has. They also have the CEAF, which is like their normal units, and then the Helldivers are their elite fighting force. The SCAF range from all sorts of ages, from 7 years old, being literal child soldiers, to being, 30 and 40-year-old men. Not everyone has to join the Helldivers. It is a voluntary program. And the survival rate of training to become a Helldiver is only 23%. And I mean, shit, the 18.7 age isn't even the average age of a Helldiver. It's the average age of someone who joins the Helldivers, because you're viable to join at age 18. There are Helldivers that are 20 and 30 and 40. Like, come the fuck on, guys. Now, the next stat that people point out to prove how shitty the Helldivers are, which they probably think is the most damning stat, is that the average Helldiver has a life expectancy of 2 minutes. This is the one that everybody brings up when they talk about how shitty a Helldiver is. But I think this almost entirely comes from the fact that they don't know what life expectancy means. I think they think it means average lifespan or like average survival rate, but it doesn't. A mission life expectancy is just what the military leaders could guarantee their soldiers will survive at least this amount of time. That's what a life expectancy is in terms of the military. Like, to give you a real world example, during Vietnam, the life expectancy of a basic gunner was like 2.6 seconds. A radio man was like 5 seconds. I'll flash it on screen right now just in case I'm getting the numbers a little bit wrong, but it's literally a couple of seconds each. Life expectancy for wars are always short as fuck. But if you were to look at something like the percentage of people who survive Vietnam, That's 90%. Only 1 in 10 people went to Vietnam actually died. If you were to look at the average lifespan of someone who went to Vietnam, it's 67 years old, because most people who went to Vietnam survived afterwards and lived to old age. But their life expectancy was only a couple of seconds. Now, if you go over to Helldivers, a Helldiver's life expectancy is 2 minutes long. Does that mean that most Helldivers die after 2 minutes? No. Does that mean that that's the average amount of time that they live? No, because that's not what life expectancy means. Just like Vietnam, you can have 1/10 of Helldivers die at war and the life expectancy can still be stupidly fucking low. I mean, shit, if the average Helldiver only lived 2 minutes, what would be the point of having a fucking ranking system? Not all Helldivers are cadets. There's death captains, there's skull admirals. They actually, survive for years and years and rank up in the military and have roles of power within the military. How would that be possible if everybody's dying after 2 minutes? What, do you have 99% cadets and then, a couple of admirals here and there? No! Just look at what the Helldivers have to deal with. They take 4 guys and they launch them down to the surface of a planet where there are literally thousands of enemies that want to kill them, and they take them all on by themselves using guerrilla-style tactics and get off the fucking planet, and they still have a life expectancy of 2 minutes? Just put that into perspective real quick. Their life expectancy is 40 times longer than a regular foot soldier in Vietnam. Why does this mean the Helldivers suck? I would say the opposite. That's really goddamn impressive. And I keep hearing argument after argument after argument that are just misreadings of certain things that the lore has said. Another one I've heard is people say, oh, well, the Helldiver training is 72 hours long because there's a 72-hour training facility. No, the 72-hour training facility is for raw recruits for the SCAF, and those recruits are specifically said to be used on destroyer ships. They're not combat troops. The Helldiver training is specifically stated to be called real deal training, and that happens on Mars, and we don't know how long that takes. My guess is that it probably takes around 9 months. And the reason why I say that is because you can join the Helldivers at age 18, but the average age for someone who becomes a Helldiver is 18.7, which is about 9 months. So it makes sense that they would join at 18, and then it would take 9 months for them to actually finish the training program, and that's when they actually become Helldivers. I also heard a joke somewhere. I don't remember where I heard it. I don't know if it was a developer, but I read it somewhere, and it basically said the oldest anyone has ever been to try to join the Helldivers was 18 and 1 hour, which is pretty fucking funny and actually sounds like something that would be written into the lore of Helldivers. So I'm gonna go with it until somebody corrects me. So what people actually believe about Helldivers is that it's just a meat grinder where they take a bunch of 18-year-old kids and chuck them at the front lines for them to keep dying over and over again. And they're untrained and unsophisticated and they're sloppy and they fucking suck. But in reality, they're actually people who join the military at age 7, have 11 years of experience of fighting in wars before they eventually even apply to become a Helldiver. Then the training that they have to go through, which is possibly 9 months long, less than 1 in 4 people actually survive. They are then taken in groups of 4 and launched down to planets with literally hundreds, if not thousands of things that want to kill them. And they have 40 times the life expectancy of that of an American soldier during Vietnam. So after all of this, for anybody who stands there and tells me that the Helldivers are not trained and are overall just shitty soldiers, you're fucking wrong. Now, to get to their physicals, there's really no good way of saying this. They don't come anywhere near the Space Marines. I mean, the Space Marines have them fucking dominated in that particular category. Not to say the Helldivers suck. In fact, they are far superior to any real-world human. I mean, they can do a lot of cool shit. They're capable of punching through the head of a steel automaton's face. They can fist fight automatons until they break them to pieces, despite the fact that they are machines. They're robots. They're made of steel and iron and metal. They're strong enough to run around for hours on end, having potentially hundreds of pounds of shit on them without tiring. They can leap and flip and do all sorts of crazy shit. They can take hits from grenades that fling them several feet and they're fine. They can jump off large cliffs that are 2-3 stories high and hit the ground, and it hurts them, but they can still go on. They're actually extremely tough when compared to normal humans, and are clearly to some extent superhuman. Now, I could do the scaling thing and basically say, well, the automatons use laser weapons, and you can react and jump out of the way of those laser weapons, ergo, your light speed. I'm not gonna do that because I'm not a scaler and I'm not stupid. And more importantly, I'm not gonna play stupid which I think is more likely what scalers do. You, me, I, and everybody else knows when the developers made this game, they did not intend for you to believe that the fucking Helldivers were capable of dodging light. No. It's ridiculous. It's clearly a gameplay feature that you can see their shots coming so that you can react to them in time, because the game wouldn't be fun if you couldn't do that. So yeah, they're fast, they can react to things, they're strong, they're durable, they're all that. It's all superhuman, doesn't come anywhere near the fucking Space Marines. The Space Marines easily win this goddamn category, not even close. Next up, we have armaments. Oh, my favorite. We had to talk about weapons and shit. Now, I just spent the last section, what do the kids say? Glazing Helldivers about their training. This is the part where I kind of have to humble Space Marines a little bit, because goddamn, do you motherfuckers think that these are just the most powerful things in all of fiction? They've got some really good weapons, like some really fucking top tier solid shit, and I don't know why that's not good enough for you guys. Why do they have to be the just bestest things ever? It's okay to just be really good. That's fine. Now, some of the Space Marine weapons are every bit as amazing as you guys claim they are. For instance, the Melta Rifle or the Multi-Melta Rifle. Really fucking good weapon. It just shoots this big ass burst of superheated energy that is hot enough to completely melt any rock or metal, as well as completely disintegrate any person it comes into contact with. If this weapon were to be used against a Helldiver, it's instant fucking death. Just instant, over. And there are a couple of other weapons that are like that, but a lot of the main weapons that y'all really like to stand behind as just the greatest shit ever is just not as good as y'all say it is. Like, for instance, one that you guys just love hailing is the Power Sword. Y'all love the fucking Power Sword. And according to you guys, the Power Sword creates an energy field around the blade that allows you to cut through any matter, no matter what, and it completely negates durability. What a crock of shit! No, it doesn't. Okay. So first off, a lot of melee weapons that are used by the Space Marines have a matter disruption field. The Power Swords do, the Power Fist does, the Thunder Hammer does, there's quite a few. Now, the Power Sword definitely has the best one, but it's not like that's the only one that has one. But also, the matter disruption fields do not negate durability entirely. They weaken the molecular bonds of the things that you're hitting, but it's not a complete negation. It's shown throughout the lore that a Power Sword can clash blades with other weapons that do not have disruption fields, and it hits armor and struggles to cut through it. It weakens the bonds and fucks that thing up, but it's not like an instant win thing. And I've heard the same argument with the Chain Sword. People say the Chain Sword is a monomolecular blade. That means it can cut between molecules and it negates durability. No, it doesn't. Monomolecular blade means that the blade is as thin as a molecule. The reason why this is important is because the less space that you're applying a certain force over, the harder that force is. So if you apply, I don't know, 100 tons to a spot that's the size of a car, it's not going to be as much force as if you apply that same amount of force to, say, a single spike or a needle. You're going to be applying way more force. So the fact that these blades are as thin as a molecule means that you're applying an insane amount of force onto the smallest amount of space possible. You're maximizing your damage, but it doesn't negate durability. That's bullshit. Having said that, this whole section's kind of irrelevant because both of these weapons are easily chopping through a Helldiver. They have absolutely no defense against them, so I'm really just ranting about these weapons because I don't like that people lie about them. But it doesn't matter, they're still strong enough to cut through Helldivers. It's not going to affect the outcome of this fight one way or the other. One thing that will affect the outcome of the fight, and is a pretty big deal, is the insane wank that the bolters get. So one thing that I actually really like about the Warhammer 40k universe is that the lore is so in-depth that you can actually read up on all of the weapons and come up with a relatively decent strength level for those weapons that would be accurate to the real world of what they would be if they really existed. Because not all, but most of their weapons actually use real world terminology. Something that I've heard a lot of people say about the bolter is that the bullets are the width of a fucking soda can. No, they're not. We know how big the bullets are. It's .75 caliber. That's less than a 20mm bullet. It's like 19 something. It's not really a caliber we use, but it is comparable to actual calibers that we do use. Now, a 20mm bullet is a bullet that is used by mounted machine guns. It's not something you would be able to just pick up and start firing. You'd fall the fuck over. And this is accurate to Warhammer 40k, as it is stated that a bolter being fired by a normal person, it's not possible for a normal person to fire it because it's DNA encoded to a Space Marine. But if they were capable of firing target, it would pop their arm out of its socket. So that part's pretty accurate. But the idea that we can't rate the strength of these guns and they're so far beyond what actually exists is just not true. In some ways, it's a lot better than guns that we have, and in some ways, and honestly the more important ways, it's kind of not. So the bullet is .75 caliber. That's a pretty decent bullet. Another thing that gives it kind of a bonus is that it's also an explosive. So you're not just getting shot with a bullet and a bullet going inside you, you're getting hit by like a tiny grenade, basically. But let me clarify, it is indeed a tiny grenade. Like when you shoot someone with a bolter, it doesn't blow an entire person up. It creates a pop that increases the amount of force that you're getting hit with, but the insane exaggerations that people use, like it's literally like getting hit by a goddamn rocket launcher, that's not the case at all. If that were the case, you'd barely be able to use the fucking weapon unless somebody was standing like all the way down the street. It wouldn't be a mid-range weapon. It would only be a long-range weapon because you can't go near them because of the fucking explosion. And the last feature of this weapon, and one that I actually think is pretty damning, it's not good, is that the bolter is not a combustive weapon. Basically what I mean by that is, I'm gonna use like dumb words just in case you're not really sure about guns. So you have a gun, right? And there's a bullet inside it, and that bullet has gunpowder. You pull the trigger, and then it makes this little metal piece go and smack the back of the bullet. That then ignites the gunpowder, and the force of that ignition shoots the bullet out of the shell and then flies at whatever you're shooting at. This force is so great that the vast majority of bullets travel faster than the speed of sound. It's very fucking fast. You can't see that shit flying. A normal person cannot react to the speed of a bullet. The problem with the bolter is that they don't actually use this technology. They're not combustion guns. They're gas-propelled guns. That's more like what a rocket launcher is. Basically what that means is that every single bullet that is inside the bolter has its own they're like little rockets. There's gas inside of it, and you pull it, and then it shoots out fire in the back that propels it forward. The reason why this matters is because gas-propelled ammunition travels significantly slower than combustion ammunition. Like, it's not even close. Combustion ammunition goes several times faster than the speed of sound, whereas gas-propelled ammunition goes like feet per second. The difference in speed is insane. You can actually see gas-propelled objects flying through the air. It's not that hard to do. They're much easier to react to. They don't hit their target with as much force, and they create way more recoil. What this realistically means is that the bolter, without the explosion, is not hitting its target nearly as hard as a normal gun that fires a 20mm bullet would be hitting. It's hitting way softer, and it's really relying on the explosive part of the bullet in order to do real damage. And while there are different variations of the bolter, there's a sniper bolter, there's a heavy bolter, there's all kinds of different bolters, they all use this same technology. Which means in comparison to the Helldivers, the projectiles are going to be traveling significantly slower and hitting far less hard. Again, the explosion is going to make up for it, but it's really relying on that explosion to do the damage. And as far as how hard that explosion hits, there aren't a ton of different ways that we can actually determine how powerful the explosion is. Really, all we can do is look at the armor that is created to defend against it and sort of compare that way. So basically, how strong is Space Marine power armor and how effective is it at defending against bolter fire? Well, to answer the second question first, it's okay at defending against bolter armor, but enough fire will break through it and, kill the person who's wearing the armor. I've heard people argue the armor is indestructible. No, that's not true. If it was indestructible, no Space Marine would ever die. That's stupid. Stop it. We can actually very easily determine how strong the armor is, because luckily for me, same way as the bolters, the armor is made out of shit that actually exists in our real world. So, yeah, the power armor is made of 3 basic components. That would be ceramite, plasteel, and then a bunch of bullshit electronic components. So going from the inside out, the first layer of the armor is the parasteel. And like I said, this is something that exists in our real world, although I don't know if we call it parasteel in real life, but basically back in the 1970s when we built muscle cars, we would build the bodies of the muscle cars out of a combination of plastics and steels. They were steel alloys and plastic pieces, and we mixed them together and we made parasteel. So if you ever see an old 1960s, 1970s muscle car, that's what they're fucking made out of. They're very, very strong. They're not necessarily bulletproof. Like, if you use a large enough caliber gun, especially if it's an armor-piercing round, it's going through that car door. But that's not really that big of a deal because that's really just the backup. That's not the main part that defends it. The middle section is the electronics, because the Space Marine power armor is actually not just like armor, it's power armor. It has a bunch of really cool abilities that it does. For instance, it's kind of like a medical bay inside of a suit. Like if you lost your arm in battle while wearing this suit will actually cauterize the wound and try and keep you from bleeding. It also has a lot of electronically moving components that increases the strength of the people wearing the armor. There's a lot of different types of vision and stuff in the helmet where you can see in like thermal vision, all these sort of things. You can see things that other people wouldn't be able to see without the helmet. It has a lot of really cool little special abilities. And this middle section is where the electronics go that control all that. And then you have the outside part, which is the hardest, and that will be ceramite. And again, ceramite exists in the real world. It's a mixture of cement, porcelain, and a bunch of other shit that is very often used in industrial plants because it has such a high temperature resistance while being cheaper than using something like tungsten, which technically has a higher resistance to temperature and is much, much harder, but way more expensive. Ceramite is a really solid backup. Normally, you would never in your right mind use ceramite as an armor piece because it's so fucking heavy. It would not be pleasant to wear. But because the Space Marines have such godly levels of strength, they can wield it. Like a chest piece of a Space Marine would not be able to be lifted by a normal human. It would essentially be like lifting a big ass chunk of concrete. So next question would be, how effective is this armor at defending against the guns? Well, in lore, it actually states that small arms fire can get through the armor if shot at very close range. This is stated in the lore. So people who are saying that the armor is completely indestructible, you're either not reading something or you're taking hyperbole way too seriously. And honestly, this is pretty accurate. Ceramite's some strong stuff, it is, but it would not survive a shot from a modern day sniper rifle if you're using armor piercing rounds. It's going through that concrete. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those videos where someone will take a sniper and they'll fire it into like a solid 40-pound weight, just solid metal, and it goes all the way through. Guns are a lot more powerful than people seem to think. Movies make it seem like you can't shoot bullets through like wooden walls and doors. Yes, the fuck you can. They go through metal and steel and iron and all kinds of shit. Depends on the caliber, depends on the kind of bullets, but they will absolutely go through. And even as good as this armor is, this is better than any Kevlar vest for sure, a lot of military grade weapons will go through this armor. Now, having said that, the lore does specify that small arms fire can shoot through it when at close range. Small arms, by the way, is any handheld gun. So it would be like a shotgun or a machine gun or a pistol. That all counts as small arms fire. So basically, this armor would completely defend against any shotgun, machine gun, or whatever at a distance. They would not be able to go through it, which again seems relatively accurate. I still think that probably wouldn't necessarily hold up depending on caliber and like what kind of bullet it is, like if it is an armor piercing round. But as a general rule, it's good enough to go by. If you have a shotgun and you're shooting from mid-range, unless you have some kind of special ammunition or something, it's not gonna go through the ceramite armor. All around is pretty tough armor. So by looking at this particular armor and then comparing it to the bolter rifle, we know the bolter rifle can get through the armor, but we know it doesn't get through it instantly. This gives us a relatively decent strength level of the bolter rifles, which is that they are monstrously powerful weapons, but maybe, perchance, not necessarily as powerful as some of the Warhammer 40k fans claim it is. So overall, with the Space Marines armaments, you have an extremely well-armored super soldier whose armor will do everything in its power to keep him alive even after he's wounded, bleeding out, and about to die, as well as a bunch of massive heavy-hitting weapons that may not necessarily be firing the fastest, and their most powerful of weapons are kind of super fucking short-ranged. Because like I said, their most powerful weapons would be their melee weapons, as well as things like the melta rifle and the multi-melta, which both have a stupidly short range. They're like short to mid-range weapons. Overall, really good armaments and something to be proud of. I don't know if the Warhammer fans are going to be, but you know, balls in your court on that one. So over on the other side, we have the Helldivers armaments. And I don't have to fight to defend the Helldivers armaments, right? We're all in agreement that the Helldivers, like, the one thing you could say about them is that they got some badass fucking weapons, right? Pretty much everybody who plays Helldivers calls them the same thing. They're basically glass cannons just because of how unbelievably overpowered all their weapons are. Now, having said that, there's actually a decent number of their weapons that aren't going to be of much use here due to that power armor that the Space Marines have. Like, for instance, one of the best guns in the game, the Breaker shotgun, is not really going to do much. It's basically just a machine gun shotgun. It's great. It's awesome. It's not going to break through that ceramite armor. A lot of their base weapons, from their pistols to shotguns to machine guns, are not going to break through that armor. Having said that, that's not really going to be much of a problem because most of those weapons don't break through the automaton and terminid armors. You see, in Helldivers, every enemy type has a different level of armor, and every weapon has a different level of armor penetration. So if you have a particular type of weapon that doesn't have a high enough armor penetration, you will not be able to fight against these stronger enemy types that have that heavier armor, like at all. You're not capable of doing damage to them. They essentially negate your damage. In order to be successful playing through Helldivers 2, you have to have some kind of weapons that have massive amounts of armor penetration. Every Helldiver at any time is going to have something that can go through armor. So the question really becomes, will these heavy armor penetrated guns that the Helldivers have be enough to get through the armor of a Space Marine? And I don't think there's any question here. They absolutely fucking will. So just to go over a couple of these weapons that Helldivers have, one of my personal favorites being the autocannon. There is no real world equivalent to what the autocannon is in Helldivers 2, because in real life, no soldier can run around with a goddamn autocannon on their shoulder. In real life, autocannons are only found on the side of tanks and vehicles and shit. You can't pick it up and fire it, which is why in Helldivers, it's mounted on your shoulder. We don't actually know what the caliber is of the autocannon. I did read somewhere, I think it might have been a wiki or something, that said it was a 20mm bullet, but I couldn't find anything in the lore that actually said that that's what it was. So for now, I'm gonna go with 20mm, but if anybody actually knows if this is factual or not, please correct me. I couldn't find what the actual caliber was. So it actually should be a slightly bigger caliber than the bolter rifle is. Unlike the bolter rifle, however, it's a combustion weapon, which means this bitch is flying way fucking faster and hitting with way more force than the bolter rifle is capable of doing. But Rouga, hold up. The bolter's ammunition fucking explodes. That's true. So does the autocannon. And the explosion is way more impressive. So when you're using the bolter rifle, you can actually shoot people at mid-range and even close range without that explosion affecting you at all. Like I said, it does do damage, but it's really just kind of a small pop that enhances the force on impact. It's not really a true-to-form fucking explosion. The auto rifle is. You cannot use the auto rifle at close range. If someone is standing 8 feet away from you and you shoot it, that explosion will hit you and knock you off your ass. And if they're right in front of you, don't even use the weapon because the explosion might fucking kill you. The explosion's radius is big enough that you can use it to completely destroy termited nests as well as whole automaton factories. It's a sizable explosion. So the bullet is hitting with enough force to get through the armor of whatever it's going through and then detonates on the inside of whatever you're firing at to completely destroy it internally. It's a really fucking solid gun. You also have things like the anti-material rifle, which arguably has even more armor penetration, it has a longer range, but does not have the added benefit of the explosion, as well as a goddamn rail cannon, which I don't know if you've ever seen a rail gun fire, but it fucking looks like this. Are you really gonna look at me with a straight face and say this fucking thing isn't going through ceramite armor? Yeah, sure, it's a smaller version of a rail gun, but that armor is also a smaller version of these fucking concrete walls it's blasting through. Look, at the end of the day, the Space Marine armor is really good against bullets. It's better than Kevlar, it's very impressive armor. But in reality, what do you really have here? You have a combination of steel, plastic, and concrete that's at absolute most an inch thick. And that has to be separated by a gap where you got a bunch of electronics and shit running through it. The armor's not indestructible, guys. It's not even fucking close. Any of the high penetrating weapons that the Helldivers use are going through this fucking armor. A common idea that I've seen in the comments of my videos where the Helldivers would just be completely slaughtered without the Space Marines even getting a single scratch on them is just not true. I mean, in Helldivers, they use their guns to fight against fucking Bile Titans and goddamn Striders, which are walking, what, 2-3 story fucking fortresses? Armored fortresses? Where is the evidence that this armor is more durable than literal walking fortresses? Now, one thing I will give to the Space Marines here is their power armor actually has this sort of anti-energy system. It repels energy weapons, essentially. Now, I don't know how effective this energy is at repelling energy weapons because unlike the weapons that actually have caliber and ballistic weaponry, where we can actually measure it and compare it to real world shit, this part's more sci-fi, so it's unclear like how much energy can these repel and how much energy would it take to bypass it? Because we know energy can bypass it, we just don't know how much. I don't know. I might be able to argue that the energy repulsion will work against the smaller energy weapons that the Helldivers have, but it won't work against the really big shit. I don't know, maybe, possibly, but honestly, I don't think it's really gonna be that much of a factor. If the Helldivers start using energy weapons on the Space Marines and see that it's being repelled, they're just gonna stop using energy weapons and use ballistic weapons. Most of their weapons are ballistic anyway, so there's really no reason for them to want to rely on the energy weapons. But that's only the handheld weapons that the Helldivers have. They also have stratagems, and stratagems are fucking awesome. So basically, the thing that makes the game so goddamn fun is that you have a destroyer that is up in the atmosphere, and you have these little things that are kind of like grenades, and you put a little code in it, and then you throw it, and depending on the code, the destroyer will send out some kind of support depending on what code you put in, and this support can be anything from like a mobile turret to a mortar to a fucking airstrike that just peppers the entire land to a goddamn nuclear warhead dropping down. Like, they can do all kinds of cool and crazy shit. And this is where their most powerful shit lies. And it's also what's going to make them the most difficult to deal with. So one argument that I see a lot with Helldivers is that the whole stratagem system is actually not all that useful, because when a Helldiver throws the stratagem, it shoots out a beam of light into the sky that's basically a warning to anyone in the area that there's a fucking stratagem right there. So get away from the stratagem. But that's not accurate. So in the lore of the game, the Helldivers' helmets actually tell them what they need to know. Like, it gives them visual information. So in order to see that light that's shooting up into space, you have to be wearing a Helldiver's helmet so that you can see it. To everybody else, it just looks like you threw some shit at them, and they don't know what it is you threw. That could be a grenade, that could be a stratagem. They have no idea. This is one of the things that makes the Helldiver so dangerous, because when a Helldiver tosses some shit at you, you have no fucking idea what's about to happen. Maybe that was a grenade, sure. And if it is, you just, get out of the way of it. But let's say you walk out of the way 10 feet or 20 feet and you're way out of arm's reach, and then all of a sudden, it was a fucking strafing airstrike that just launches bombs in a horizontal line or napalm across the whole field. You have no idea how to defend against the thing that's being dropped down. And really, there's just no kind way to say this. When it comes to stratagems, the Space Marines have absolutely nothing that comes even close to the power of the stratagems that can come down upon them. I'm not going to say most, but many of the stratagems that can be summoned by the Helldivers will completely one-shot a Space Marine. Whether that be an orbital laser or a 500 kilogram bomb or a fucking rail cannon being shot from a goddamn destroyer, they just can't defend against them. It is an absolute instant one-hit kill. It will completely blow them into fucking pieces, and many of which they don't even really have a way of dodging properly. Like, if you throw a stratagem at them and a fucking orbital laser comes down, the orbital laser literally follows people. Like, the laser, like, they just have to fucking gun it. The only option they have is to run as fast as they can away from the laser as it chases them. And the orbital laser can't be defended against by their armor because it literally phases through shit. It's just a massive beam of heated radiation that fires and phases through everything that it goes all the way down to the ground. So like, if you shoot an orbital laser at a Bile Titan, it doesn't just stop when it hits the Bile Titan. It goes through the Bile Titan and kills anything standing underneath it as well. And it doesn't laser its way through. It's like this heated radiation shit. So if the orbital laser hits on top of the Space Marine, it's literally going right through the armor and just superheating and radiating the Space Marine himself. It's essentially an instant kill. It would almost be the same thing as if you shot him with a giant fucking melta. He would be fucking dead. My point of saying all this is not that the Space Marines are gonna lose. It's that the Space Marines need to be smart, and they need to be aware that Helldivers they're fighting are actually a fucking threat to them. So what else they got? The Helldivers have a ton of different fire weapons. I don't think that that's going to be all that useful against the Space Marines, despite their fire weapons actually being really fucking powerful. Like, their flamethrowers and shit are capable of destroying and even melting automatons that are made out of some form of metal. Like, they are very powerful fire weapons. But like I said before, the armor of the Space Marines is made out of ceramite, which is specifically used in industrial plants to resist heat. There's no evidence that the automatons have a higher heat resistance than the ceramite. And we've seen Space Marines defend against heat-based attacks and fire before, so I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. One thing that might be an issue, though, is the Helldivers' caustic attacks. So the Helldivers have a large variety of different sort of green gas-based equipment that they use against their enemies, and it's really fucking good. It looks like a green gas, and you would think that it's just toxic. It is, but it's not just toxic. It's actually a acidic gas. The gas itself is stated in the lore to melt through flesh as well as biological and plated armor. So you can actually use these caustic attacks on a tank and it will start melting through the tank to get to the people inside the tank. They can use this in a lot of different forms. There's a version of it where they drop an entire bomb and just basically gas the entire area. But they also have kind of like a flamethrower-like version, but it's, the gas. They have a drone that can shoot the gas out. They have a grenade that does it. There's a bunch of different methods of delivery for this gas system. but it's a really good acidic gas. And it also fucks with the mind, and anyone who breathes the gas in will not only melt them from the inside out, but also it causes confusion and causes them to act really strangely. They'll start attacking their own people. They'll just like randomly walk around and look into the distance. Like they won't behave as normal as this acid starts to burn into their mind and their body and just fuck them up. And you can't really say that this won't affect the Space Marines, because one of the Tyranids' main way of attacking is by using acidic-based attacks. So it's not like they're immune to acid. Acid can get through their armor, otherwise those acid attacks would be completely pointless and wouldn't do anything. The one thing I think that the Space Marines will be able to defend against is the actual mind shit. Like, as long as they're wearing a helmet, the mind stuff isn't really gonna get them. But the actual caustic properties of the gas should burn through the armor if they spend too much time actually in the gas. And for the Space Marines who don't wear their helmets because the vanity, I suppose, they'll basically be instantly dead, as when the caustic attack blows up around them, it'll just eat through their fucking face and their skull and their brain, and they're fucking dead. It's acid. But if they're wearing their helmet, that should defend against it for the most part. It should even defend against the weird brain shit. As I briefly mentioned, they also have drones that hover around them. These drones can have all sorts of different types of attacks. They can do flamethrower attacks, caustic attacks, laser attacks, ballistic attacks, whatever it is they want to give the drone, they can do. They also are capable of dropping down something called a Patriot armor. I think there's another one called an Exterminator armor, and it's a massive fucking mech with 2 legs. The Patriot armor, I believe, has 4 autocannons, and then the other one has a rocket launcher / Gatling gun. And this is also something that they can summon at any time from the destroyer, jump into, and then they can use that to fight against their enemies. They can shoot down these giant payloads that land and then fire mines everywhere, so that anyone who tries to cross this particular section will hit these mines. Mines will blow up, cause all kinds of damage. And I can go on and on and on. They have so much shit. They have a fucking like Tesla coil thing that they shoot down, and anyone who goes near it shoots out fucking lightning at them who pass by. In terms of just sheer variety of shit that they can summon to fight against their enemies, there really is no comparison here. The Helldivers just have way more shit that just gives them a larger variety of options when fighting when it comes to Space Marines. And I think the only thing left to talk about when it comes to Helldivers is the armor. Just right out the gate, it's nowhere near as good as the Space Marine armor. It doesn't even come close. And that's because the Space Marine armor is really supposed to be sort of a one solution for any sort of problem type thing. It's a jack of all trades type of armor. There are different armors the Space Marine use that have different properties, but for the most part, they all do the same things with slight specializations. The Helldivers armor is very different. Every single armor has a totally different purpose. That makes it so that there are many different kinds of Helldivers you can fight for whatever that Helldiver wants that armor to do. There's certain Helldivers armor that defends against caustic attacks, some that defend against fire attacks. There's demolition expert armor. There's medic expert's armor. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to talk about. The med stims in the Helldivers universe are stupidly fucking good when compared to the Space Marines. So there are these little med stims that every single Helldiver has. You have at least 3. If you're a medic, you can have, I think, 4 or 5. And whether you break your leg or you're bleeding out or whatever, you put one med stim in your body and it actually puts your fucking bone back together and completely heals you up to 100%. To where you no longer have broken limbs, or you're no longer bleeding out of your fucking stomach or lung. Like, it literally heals you completely. By comparison, the Space Marines do have healing technology, but nowhere near that level. But back to the Helldiver armor, it's stated to be made out of the same substance that the destroyer ships are made out of, which is a titanium alloy, which means a metal that is just a bunch of different forms of titanium put together. And because it's used to make the destroyer ships, the assumption would have to be that it is capable of surviving massively faster than light travel, which for obvious reasons is really good. While being very durable armor, I don't think this is necessarily surprising to say. It really shouldn't hold a candle up to the fucking power armor that the Space Marines have. Not necessarily because the materials that make the armor are any worse. It's just that in the hand of a Space Marine, it's gonna look like a fucking, like, child's play armor. Like, it's gonna be so thin and flimsy to a Space Marine just based off of sheer size and strength levels. Like, there's no evidence that a dude who can pick up and chuck 18,000 pounds would have any issues destroying this armor. I will say that people who say that these guys are gonna get one-shotted by a bolter gun may actually be surprised by that not being the case. I mean, oftentimes Helldivers are shown standing on top of grenades that go off underneath them and it fucking their legs up, but they're still capable of getting up and walking and fighting. And with one healing stim, their legs heal, and then they're back into it. So I don't necessarily agree with the idea that one shot from any gun used by the Space Marines is instantly going to kill a Helldiver. However, it's more than likely going to kill a Helldiver. Really depends on where he hits them, but like if you hit him in the fucking chest or the head, he's still gonna fucking die. Like the armor's good for a normal person, but when compared to a Space Marine, it's just, it doesn't compare. Now, there are a couple of things that the armors do that will, like for instance, their stealth armor is really good. And the way the stealth armor is described is that essentially it absorbs all light that hits it, which if you're not sure how that's impressive, how eyesight works is that you only see things because light reflects off of it and goes into your eyes. What you're seeing isn't actually the thing, you're seeing the light entering your eye from the thing you're looking at. If something theoretically had the ability to absorb all light, you wouldn't be able to see it even if it was standing 2 feet in front of you. And it should be noted that the armor is said to absorb all forms of light and radiation across the entire spectrum to look invisible to any species that might see it. This means that even if the Space Marines were to have multiple different types of vision, or their helmet were to try and help them locate these people they otherwise wouldn't be able to see, the likelihood that they would actually be able to see it anyway is very low. Basically, they just don't have any way of actually seeing these motherfuckers, and they're going to have to like listen out for them, basically. Now, the argument to this would be that in game, you're not invisible. When you wear this armor, it lessens the radius of sight the people can see you from, but they can still fucking see you if you get too close. I kind of take this as more of a gameplay thing as opposed to a lore thing, because in lore, the way the armor is described to turn you invisible doesn't really match the way it's shown in gameplay. Also, that's the same way it works for the Terminids, despite the fact that the Terminids are blind and shouldn't see you either way. But yet the armor still helps you get closer to them than you would if you weren't wearing the armor, even though it's not sound-based at all, it's just sight-based. In theory, the armor should have absolutely no difference when you're dealing with Terminids, but it does, which is why I kind of take that as just gameplay. In actual lore, you should essentially be invisible while wearing this armor, regardless of how close to your enemy that you get. So that's going to be something that the Space Marines are also going to have to get over. So after going through all of the armaments and armor and all this kind of shit, where do we stand? I don't think there's all that much argument to be made here. The Helldivers definitely have the better armaments. While the Space Marines easily have the better armor, and their most powerful weapons, I would say, are more powerful than the Helldivers, that being the melee weapons and things like the Melta rifle. When you get to their medium and long range weapons, the Helldivers just completely fucking throttle the Space Marines. Their weapons are stronger. There's a larger variety of things that they can do with the weapons. The fact that they have things like being able to make smoke screens and turn invisible and have eagles show up and pepper the whole fucking ground with all sort of little explosions. Being able to call down mobile turrets and fucking mech suits and shit. By comparison, the armaments that the Space Marines have require them to be very straightforward in their tactics. Whereas the Helldivers armaments allow them to change their tactics on the fly to do whatever it is they need to do. If they want to go straight in and just bulldoze their way through the Space Marines, which won't work, but if they want to, they do have the weapons to allow them to do that. If they want to play it more stealthy or use guerrilla warfare or hide and lay mines and traps and play that kind of game, they have the armaments that will allow them to do that. They can basically do whatever they want. And there are many, many things that they have that allow them to completely fucking demolish their enemies without even really being there. With things like the mortar strike and the orbital laser, where they don't even have to be in a line of sight of their enemy in order to hit them with attacks. And again, by comparison, the Space Marines just can't do that. But I think we've gotten through all the things that we need to determine who would win in this ultimate fucking showdown. So let's fucking start the showdown. Right out the gate, I should start by saying that the winner of this engagement is going to heavily depend on where the engagement takes place at. For instance, if I just lock all these motherfuckers in a 10 by 10 room, then obviously the Space Marines are gonna win, because they're just going to start going ham with melee weapons, and there's literally nothing the Helldivers can do about it. Then if you make it way bigger and put them in, say, the Roman Colosseum or some shit in a giant field, then it becomes a little bit closer, but I still think it probably goes to the Space Marines, because it really just goes to whoever can shoot the other one first. And without anything to hide behind, they're probably both going to shoot each other at the same time. And if that ends up happening, who's more likely to survive being shot from the other? The Space Marine is more likely to survive than the Helldiver is. But then let's say the engagement takes place in something like a very, very thick forest. Well, now all of a sudden the advantage isn't for the Space Marines, it's for the Helldivers. Because you got this giant fucking 9 foot tall, 5 foot wide bright ass blue motherfucker running around a thick forest looking for this little dude who can hide in the brush and attack him without him even being able to notice? I mean, if a Helldiver wanted to, he could just hide behind a tree and then wait for the motherfucker to pass and then just throw a stratagem on him. Man won't even notice he has a stratagem stuck to his back, and then all of a sudden a fucking 500 kilogram bomb drops from the sky and instantly obliterates him, and there's nothing he can do about it. So the question becomes, like, what is the way that we can do this that's gonna make it the most interesting and fair? And honestly, just do it the way it's done in both of their fucking games. They're both gonna be on a planet. We'll change what type of planet as we talk about it, just to kind of see different variations of how this can go down. And the mission is simple. The Helldivers drop down, they have to find the Space Marines and kill them. The Space Marines have to find the Helldivers and kill them, and that's it. So, who wins? One thing that I think is going to disappoint the Space Marine people is I don't think that any of their close range weapons are going to come in handy at all. Like, I just don't see this fight happening at close range. The Helldivers don't have really any close range weapons, and they're really used to fighting melee enemies who are rushing at them trying to kill them. Staying away from the melee characters in Helldivers is a really big part of playing the game. Pretty much every strong weapon that Helldivers have that's going to be strong enough to take out something like a Space Marine is a long-range weapon, and they're going to use that to their advantage. And it would not be beneficial to a Space Marine to rush at a Helldiver who's really far away to try and hit him with a sword or a melter rifle, while this motherfucker is shooting at him with a goddamn autocannon or a railgun. He'll be dead long before he ever reaches him. So this fight is definitely going to be taking place mostly at long or mid-range. Also, I don't necessarily think the Space Marines would want to fight the Helldivers at close range. I mean, even if the Space Marine did get to the Helldiver and killed him, the Helldiver would likely drop a stratagem before he died, and I mean, you don't want to be there when that happens. And with this fight being a 3 versus 20 fight, the Helldivers will be able to sacrifice some of their men a lot more easily than the Space Marines will be able to sacrifice theirs. A single life of a Space Marine is far more valuable than that of a Helldiver. And actually, I just thought about this. The Helldivers canonically have a little computer built into their arm that give them an active radar for all enemies in the vicinity, which means, oh shit, the Helldivers are gonna know where the Space Marines are before the Space Marines are aware where the Helldivers are. Oh fuck. The Helldivers win. Do the Space Marines have something that allow them to find the Helldivers? Because if that's not the case, I don't think they can win this. Like, they have the Auspex scanner and the auto senses, but neither of those are true to form radar like the Helldivers have. They have shit that allows them to look at a building and then tell how many life signs are in that building. But they actually have to see the building first, and it doesn't tell them straight up locations. It just gives them some information. And that's kind of how every type of scanner the Space Marines have. The Helldivers, by comparison, can tell where somebody is from several miles away based on a legit radar and knows their exact location. They get a map of the entire area. The Space Marines don't have anything close to this. Alright, so think about this for a second. They're both looking for each other. The Helldivers map is really fucking far. Like, it's not small. They do not have to be close to an enemy to see where they are. Once they do, they don't actually need to be in sight in order to hit them with something. They can lay down a mortar near where they are, and the mortar will automatically fire extremely long distances to hit their enemy. I mean, these mortars shoot well over a mile or two to hit their target. If the Helldiver wants to, he doesn't have to stay by that mortar. He can literally just go away, and the only real sensible thing that the Space Marine would do is to go to where the mortar is, to where the thing that's shooting at them is, to try and stop it, because obviously that's the direction that the Helldivers are in. That would draw in the Space Marines. If they wanted to, they could also lay down mines or something like that to stop the Space Marines as they come through. Now, the Space Marines are relatively smart. They can avoid the mines and do that kind of stuff. They can get around and get to where they need to get on their hunt for the Helldivers. But again, it doesn't matter where they go, the Helldivers are going to be aware of their location because of their radar. And as far as I'm aware, the Space Marines don't have anything that can block radar or have a radar themselves. So this whole fight, the Helldivers are going to know where they are and be able to react to everything they do and everywhere they go. The first shot is going to be made by the Helldivers upon the Space Marine. There's no way around that. The Space Marines can't even sneak up on the Helldivers because of that radar. If the Helldivers want to stay away, they can. If they don't have to, and they can sneak up on them, but the fight is starting off in their court. And the fact that they have things like the autocannon, like the anti-material rifle, like certain stratagems, the orbital laser, the 500 kilogram bomb, the rail cannon, so many different things that they can fire at the Space Marines that they could actually use to kill them. Many of which will kill them in one hit. Like even the autocannon, they don't actually need to call down a stratagem in order to do this. The autocannon has an explosive range of like, I forgot what it was, like 6, 7, 8 feet, something like that. If a Helldiver gets a shot off in a Space Marine, it really doesn't matter where he hits them. He can hit him in the back, he can hit him in the chest, he can hit him, it doesn't matter. The fact the bullet's strong enough to go through the armor, and then with an explosion radius of that large, you're literally destroying every single organ in his body, and he's dying in one shot. The only way to not kill him would be to like shoot him in the foot. And even then, you're still like blowing up his whole fucking leg. Yeah, I don't even think I need 20 Helldivers for this. I think even if I didn't give them any reinforcements and I just had 4 Helldivers, they kind of win solely because of the minimap, which sounds crazy, but yeah, kinda. Like, if they're not aware of one another's presence, the Helldivers will win. Now, if they are aware of each other's presence and they're standing face to face looking at each other, that's going to change things quite a bit. That's really going to be dependent on how many things there are to hide behind. Again, if it's an open field, the likelihood that the Helldivers win drop tremendously because it's more likely that a bolter rifle is going to kill a Helldiver than a Helldiver's gun is going to kill a Space Marine in a single shot. However, that still doesn't necessarily mean that the Space Marine wins if we give them reinforcements. So let's say the Space Marine shoots the Helldiver, kills the Helldiver. The Helldiver has to call in reinforcements. Even if all the Helldivers die before any of them get off shots on the Space Marines, the reinforcements will just come in automatically. When they come in, they can then pilot the reinforcements and guide it, because in case you're not aware, the way the reinforcements come in, the reason why they're called Helldivers is because they're in these things called Hell Pods. It's a big-ass refrigerator-sized drill that contains a Helldiver inside of it, and it gets launched down to the planet. They can steer it. It's very common in the game to steer it to fire through certain enemy types. Like, you can destroy tanks with it, you can destroy giant bile titans, which are like 3-story tall giant spider things. You can destroy massive robots and shit. Anyway, point is, with 4 of these motherfuckers coming down after they just slaughtered the 3 Helldivers, even if the Helldivers didn't get any shots off, they can just pilot these drills to blast through the fucking Space Marines and kill them. The Space Marines would not survive being hit by a refrigerator-sized drill being shot from space. They're not that durable. That would be an insane amount of force. I thought this was going to be so much closer. The problem with the Space Marines is that their arsenal and basically everything they can do is just way too limited. Their entire arsenal and armor and everything is built around overpowering and bruising and forcing their way through everything. It's literally the only thing they can do. They're not particularly good at stealth. They do have shielding, and the shielding would help for certain weapons, but not all. Like, it would help against something like the auto rifle or sort of like any long-range gun, right? But if they decide to throw a stratagem out, all of a sudden the shielding's not going to do shit. But shit, even in that case, the Helldivers have personal force fields that they could put on themselves, as well as massive force fields that they can put around their whole team, where they can shoot out of the force field, but nothing can come inside of it to harm them. So even in a straight up firefight, even if the Space Marines and Helldivers see each other face to face right at the start, the Helldivers still have the equipment necessary to make them more durable than the Space Marines. So even their physicals won't remain superior to that of the Helldivers. You'd have the same situation if they called down the Patriot armor as well. With either shield or Patriot mech, you would now have Helldivers that have durability that the bolter rifles would not destroy in a single shot, but the Helldivers would still have the weapons that are strong enough to take out the Space Marines in 1 or 2 shots. And even if I decided to go all in on the physical force aspect of the Space Marines and gave all 3 of them a Dreadnought, they would lose one of their biggest aspects, which is that they can run super fucking fast, which is the only thing that's going to get them away from the stratagems that are going to be falling on them. Like, now that they're in the Dreadnought and they can't move at those speeds, you can have 4 Helldivers drop down 4 orbital lasers, and the lasers will literally phase through the Dreadnoughts, firing superheated radiation, just frying whoever's piloting the Dreadnought and killing them pretty much instantly. Yeah, this fucking sucks. I don't see how the Space Marines can possibly win this. Like, even if I give all the Space Marines jetpacks, right? Then that way they can maybe maneuver themselves in closer to the Helldivers so they can actually get in, like, the close range hits, right? The Helldivers also have jetpacks. That's something that they can use. So you'd have to also give them the jetpacks, and now they're on equal playing field again, and it's just who could shoot who. So in summary, there are certain things that the Space Marines excel at that Helldivers don't. Close range combat's the main one, but they're also more durable and things like this. They're fucking tanks, essentially. They excel in their ability to force their ways through whatever obstacle they need to force their ways through. They are both tanks as well as DPS rolled in one. The problem here is Helldivers are literally everything. They can be anything they want to be, and they can do anything they want to do. And their weapons are not even really arguably more powerful than the Space Marine weapons, and they're more powerful at farther ranges. The only way the Space Marines are winning this is if they're locked in an arena in close range to fight each other. Any other way, if they're in any sort of war type situation or scenario, the Helldivers are fucking winning, and I don't really see any way around that. If you guys have other ideas, by all means, let me know, because this was trippy, man. But that's gonna be all for me. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and join the membership. Remember, if you join the membership, you get videos early. And always remember, y'all be safe out there. You hear?